In this video I'm gonna show you how I made this axe completely by hand. That means no power hammer, no forge press, no grinder. And I'm also giving it away. I begin the process by upsetting one side of the bar of steel. This allows me to compress the material and make it thicker. The idea is to make a preform of a beard. So once I have achieved the desired thickness, I start drawing out the beard and shape it on the anvil. Once the beard is somewhat established, I begin marking where I want the set downs for the eye and the pole of the axe. For this specific weld I leave roughly 25 mm for the lap weld in front of the eye, 30 mm for the lugs or insides of the eye, and 20 mm for the pole. I then use my center punch to mark the material so that it's visible even in forging temperature. Remember to mark the set downs for the pole on the other side of the bar of steel. When the steel is hot, I line up my center marks on the edge of the anvil and begin making the set down. I then flip the bar and begin making the set downs on the pole of the axe. After one side of the axe is completed, I turn the bar of steel around and do the exact same thing on the other side. Once all the set downs are established, I use the pin section of my hammer to start drawing out the lugs of the axe. In this case, I want the lugs to be pointy, so I use the horn of the anvil to shape them to my liking. As a final measure in the preform of the axe, I use a flatter to smooth out the lugs of the axe. I almost forgot, the final step in the preform is to thin out the end of the little lap. It makes, in my opinion, a cleaner transition for the forge weld. Alright, so the preform is now completed and we're just about to heat it up in the forge and fold it and hopefully forge weld it into an axe. Let's go. If I did a good job in the preform, it should line up relatively even when I start to fold the axe. I then insert a small piece of high carbon steel just in front of the eye. Since high carbon steel generally has a lower welding temperature than mild steel, it helps making a stronger and more secure weld, in my opinion. I then apply some flux and heat it up to a bright yellow color and then begin forge welding. I repeat this process a few times until I'm sure that it's welded. I also make sure to blend the welds on the profile of the axe. I find that the pin section of the hammer does a really good job at that. A good way to see if your weld is strong is to carefully drift the eye of the axe. If your weld is weak, the extreme pressure of the drifting will split the eye open. But if it's strong, it will stay shut. When I am happy with the rough shape of the axe, I begin working on the edge steel. In this case, it's a piece of SS2090 spring steel. I basically forge it into a wedge and then I clean it up using files. To make room for inserting the edge steel, I use a chisel and slowly work my way down. Once it's deep enough, I clean it with a brush and insert the edge steel. I then use my vise to close it in. Before heating it up again, I apply some flux to prevent oxidation, after which I begin welding the steel. You might notice that I'm using a smaller hammer this time, and there are primarily two reasons as to why. First, it's much easier to tack the pieces together. A bigger hammer with more force could make the pieces almost slip or move the edge steel, but a lighter hammer just barely tacks them together. The second reason is that I don't want to shape that part of the axe just yet. I only want to fuse the pieces together, so a small hammer is preferred in this particular case. After the edge is welded, I move over to my regular hammer and start drawing out the blade using the pin of the hammer. I move back and forth between drawing out the blade and working on the profile of the axe. By doing that, it's much easier to stay within the design I have in mind. I once again insert the drift to finalize the shape of the eye of the axe. I wasn't quite happy with the shape of the blade, so I decided to do a few more heats just to shape the blade closer to my liking. Alright, so we're done with the forging and it's now time to touch up the profile and establish the edge. And since we're doing it without power tools, we're going to use files. I think everything went well with the forge weld. I can't see any delaminations anywhere, but the truth is in the pudding. So we'll have to file down a little bit to see if it really is solid. So some of you might be asking what to do if you do have delaminations. Well, it depends on the severity of the delaminations. Let's say you have a small delamination here on the edge, but the rest is fine. Then I would use it, no problem. However, if I were going to sell it, I would be very honest with that. Or I would consider not selling it at all. Let's say there's a major delamination that a whole weld didn't take, then I would throw it away and try again from scratch. But let's say that you have a tiny delamination here where you also have a lot of mass to work with. Then I would try to clean that up as best as I could, flux it and heat it up again and try to fix it. And if that doesn't work, I would still save it as a reminder or throw it away. And don't be discouraged if you have a delamination, okay? I have friends that are master blacksmiths that every batch has to put 1 or 2 axes aside because of delamination. And that happens to me too all the time, so don't be discouraged. And there can be multiple reasons as to why. Usually it's because you didn't pay attention, maybe you didn't have enough heat, maybe you didn't clean it properly, maybe your hammering was a bit off and something got in, you know, it can really be a lot of things, but usually it wasn't clean enough and not hot enough. That's usually the answer, but there can be other answers as well. So don't be discouraged, get back up on that horse and try again. When filing the edge, I like to start out with a steep edge just to line everything up. I then work my way back to smooth everything out. If I did a good job, the axe will most likely outlive me. So it's important to stamp it so that the future owner knows who made it and where it's from. Before I heat treat the axe, I do a few cycles of normalization. The normalization helps reduce residual stresses in the material, almost like a spot treatment for the axe. To heat treat the axe, I slowly heat it up to the proper temperature and I then quench it in oil. Remember to look up how to heat treat the specific steel you are working with. To temper the blade, I first use some sandpaper on the edge so I can see the clean steel. I then stick it back in the forge, carefully watching the temper colors on the blade. To test the hardness of the blade, I use my Japanese Rockwell files. It gives you a rough idea how hard the edge is. If the file bites, it's softer than the file. If it skates, it's harder. In this case, it seems to be around 55 Rockwell. To sharpen the blade, I use my trusty old files to carefully file the edge until I can feel the burr established on the edge. I then switch to sandpaper to make the edge even finer. Finally, I use a piece of leather with polishing compound to strop the edge, making it quite sharp. Alright, so we're completely done with the head now, and it's time to move on to the handle. And just like the other videos in this series, I recommend using a store-bought handle, or in this case, an unfinished handle. I'm going to make a video where we're going to deep dive into handle making it from scratch and fitting and everything like that. But the basics is, you want to seat the head first, make enough room so that you can get the head just on there. Then you tap it on the back to force it in a little bit, remove the head, and then you can usually see where you have contact with the wood. Remove those areas either with a knife or a rasp, and then continue back and forth until you have the head in a position of your liking and contact all around the handle. Thank you so much for watching the video. I really hope you enjoyed it. So in today's video we made this asymmetrical folded bearded axe. Now that's a mouthful. Anyways, I'm giving it away, so subscribe to my YouTube channel and leave a comment, and I will pick one out at random that will receive this axe. So the asymmetrical fold is such an interesting way to make an axe, and a very practical way actually. It may not seem practical, but it is, because of the reason that you can actually do so much in the preform without having to worry to do the exact same on the other side before the fold. You can actually focus on one side, do it however you want it, then just fold it with that little lap, weld it together, and there you go. You have a asymmetrical folded axe. And it's very fun to make, and I hope that it was somewhat educational. At least it was for me. I would like to take a moment to mention my website, where you can see all of the axe models that I have available, and you can also sign up for the email list or join my private Facebook group to get notified once axes are back in stock. Or you can get notified for a specific model if that's what you would prefer. So thank you for checking out my website. I would also like to take a moment to thank everyone that chose to support what I do here, helping me create these videos for free here on YouTube for everyone to see. So thank you so much for supporting me, and if you would like to help out, you can find the links to my Patreon and my YouTube membership in the description. Thank you for considering, and thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next video. Goodbye.